Welcome, everybody, back to Caravan of Consciousness. This is episode number 16, and we are recording this on the 19th of August, 2025. So we should have this show up in the next couple of days or so. But just for reference for people that are watching at a later date, so you know where we are in the so-called time frame. And today I've got Guy Anderson with me, who is an author and researcher. He's got a couple of books, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids and The Rise of the Clones, the Cabbage Patch Babies. And Guy researches things such as Tartaria, Antiquitech, the mud floods, world fairs, lost history, clones, the orphan trains, and the last reset, and much, much more, which we'll get into tonight. So, welcome, Guy.
Thank you very much for having me on, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. So, first of all, I'd like to know a little bit. I usually ask all my guests this. I like to know a bit about your background, as in, like, when you were a child. Did you have a sense when you were younger that this place wasn't what we've been sold that it is? Like, did you feel there was something just not quite right, or were you in the matrix and then there was a few stepping stones that got you to where you are now?
I was one of these kids that never fitted in, and as an adult, I don't. And I've always felt that I was born in the wrong time. I find it very difficult to connect and function in the world, and I've moved around quite a lot, and I can never find anywhere that I would call home. And friends come and go, and I find it difficult to find people that think like I do. So I was one of these kids that stared out of the window a lot and was sent out of the class for asking questions when I should have been listening, or um, being confrontational with a teacher, which I wasn't. I just sometimes didn't agree. So I was often getting in trouble at school for questioning things. And this actually um, was passed down to my eldest son, and I was constantly being sent up the school because he was asking questions when he should have been listening, and he would disagree with certain things he was told. But so I kind of always had this feeling that I don't belong here. I don't know where I belong, but it's not here. But my introduction, if you like, to the alternative way of thinking and occulted history was actually through my father. He joined the Freemasons when I was young, and as I got older into my teens, he started sharing bits and pieces with me, but nothing he wasn't allowed to. And then one day I managed to get his briefcase open that he took to lodge meetings, and I found all of this stuff, the regalia and his books, and that was it. And then as I got a little bit older, I started reading his books. The first one was Atlantis to the Sphinx, and then I started reading David Icke, and I suppose I found something in my father, although we didn't get on. I found something in him that I could resonate with, and that was his quest for occulted and hidden knowledge. And so I joined the Freemasons as well, in the hope that I would be able to uncover our past and perhaps know things that other people didn't. Um, I found out bits and pieces, but not a lot. Nothing that I'd hoped for, and it didn't look like on the horizon I was going to either, because I just didn't have the breeding or the influence to get high enough up the rank to know what really goes on out there. So I left a few years ago now. Um, but my journey really started quite young, and in recent years, over the last decade, I've been online researching, and up until then, just reading more and more books. I started reading Graham Hancock, Albert Einstein, a little bit of Stephen Hawking, and so I've just got this quest for knowledge, with a big belief that we are being lied to, and things are being hidden from us. And then in back end of 2019, I discovered Tartaria, and that became an obsession because it's the biggest conspiracy of them all.
Yes, it is. I thought flat Earth was the biggest conspiracy, but that was just a stepping stone, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think to wipe out an entire civilization and add 800 years to our timeline, it blows everything else out the water. Because if they're capable of doing that, what else could they do?
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to your dad and the Freemasons, um, they, I was going to say they've been given a bad rap, but they haven't really, I guess, because in the upper echelons of the Freemasons, there is a lot of nefarious stuff and satanic things that go on. But do you think that they were infiltrated at some stage? Do you think initially when the Freemasons started out? Because I just bought a book the other day. I went to a book exchange and I just got a gem. It's a hardcover. It's not leather bound, but it's a really old book, and it's called was it called the Blood? Um, the Holy Blood and the Holy.
The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, yes, yes. And I'm just getting into like the begin well, the Knights Templar obviously and the Cathars. Um but they also do talk about the Freemasons, but I haven't actually got to that part yet. But getting back to what I was talking about, so were they infiltrated at some stage? Do you think when the Freemasons first started out, they were on the right side, but they got infiltrated by whatever it is that's now got a hold on pretty much this whole realm?
Well, the Freemasons started well, but they were kind of created by someone called Hiram Abiff, and he was the architect of King Solomon's Temple, and he had the knowledge of how Atlantis was built, how to build using cymatics, using frequency, and sacred geometry. That was shared with him. We don't know where he got that information from. I never got high up enough to find that out. So the reason when you see Masons going to a lodge meeting that they're wearing black, and sometimes they'll wear morning suits, depending on what lodge they go to. In London, you'll see them quite often wearing morning suits. It's because they're in mourning for Hiram Abiff. So he was the architect for King Solomon's Temple, and he started a, if you like, a group called the Freemasons, the free and accepted stonemasons, where they shared this information on how to build using frequency and sacred geometry. And he was murdered. He was murdered for three people approached him. They wanted to know how to join his organization, how to join his group or club, if you like, and he wouldn't share the information. They knew that he had some sort of password or a secret handshake that people identified themselves with. He wouldn't pass that information on, so he was killed. And he was the only person to be buried on the inside of the wall where by King Solomon, where the priests were. Normally, someone like him would be buried on the outside of the walls, but he was considered to be a genius, and King Solomon, sort of literally worshipped the ground he walked on. And so he was the founder, if you like, of Freemasonry. So it was sharing, I suppose, sacred geometry. That's it in a nutshell. It was sharing that information that they believe came all the way back from Atlantis. Um, Now, somewhere along the line, the organization's got bigger and bigger, and now it spans across Earth. Every town and city, even some large villages have a Masonic lodge. I suppose to the public, they're seen in two guises. One is uh, a benevolent organization raising money for charity, often children's charities and children's wards in hospitals. But there's another side to them where people think that they're nefarious, that they're satanic, and so on. And often this information is shared by people who haven't joined. Um, it's a sort of rumor mill. Now, the problem is, most of us who get to the level where I got, which was Master Freemason, that's where most people get to, we don't know what happens past that.
So what degree is the master? Is that third degree?
Third.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
third. So out of 33 degrees, and then there are 66 dark degrees after that. So
Yeah.
33 light, 66 dark. I don't know anybody that's reached 33rd. I've met people that say they have a friend that did, but
Yeah.
it's unlikely. And as for the 66 dark degrees, nobody really knows anything about that. Um, so really today, people join for two different reasons. One, they'll join for the right reasons. They'll be wanting to um, perhaps belong to something. They might have, and I've seen this quite a lot. They might be widowed, and they want to make new connections. They want a social life. They're perhaps lonely, and I've come across that a lot. So it's opening up a new social circle, if you like, and along the way getting to do some good, going to events, charity golf matches, and stuff like that. The other reason for joining, the second reason, is because people want to use it for personal gain. So it could be getting promoted at work. It could be perhaps somebody might have issues with planning permission, or it wants a get out of jail free card, so to speak. So people will use it for two different reasons. I joined for a different reason. I joined because I wanted to find out what they knew,
Yep, yep,
but never got high up enough to ever really uncover anything much other than a bit about King Solomon and Hiram Abiff.
yep, yep. And is there any truth to, or do you know if there's truth to the fact that most of the, like the police force, people in politics, people in those sort of hierarchical or authoritarian type roles, um, are in the Freemasons, and are they sort of at that higher level, that 33rd degree level and things like that?
I don't know what level they're at, but I would suggest that they are.
Yeah,
But yes, yes. In the lodge I went to, which was the Grand Lodge of the United Kingdom, which is the headquarters, my lodge actually met there, and it was full of high-ranking police officers from the Metropolitan Police and Scotland Yard,
yeah,
and a lot of them were propelled through their career by simply being a Freemason. So yes, it's infiltrated everywhere.
yep,
So somewhere along the line, it's been hijacked, and I believe that that was by the Jesuits who actually hijacked everything really
yep,
from, they are previously known as the Phoenicians. They've taken control of every town and city, every business, every religion,
yep,
um, finance, admiralty law, maritime law. They've taken control. So yes, it's not what it was, but a lot of people still join thinking it is.
yep,
And for many, it will remain that, sharing sort of information and history on Freemasonry and rituals and nothing nefarious at all. But as I said earlier on, what happens in the higher levels, we just don't know. But normally in the UK, the head of the Freemasons will be a member of the royal family, and at the moment it's Prince Michael, the Duke of Kent.
yep,
But yeah, and in America, normally the president will be a high-ranking Freemason.
yep, yep. Wow, it's just, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Like, years ago, I did some study. It was like an alternative sort of school, into esoteric psychology and astrology. And they were very much in with the Freemasons. And at the time, I had no idea about the Freemasons and what they were about. And they also spoke a lot about the World, not World Health Organization. What's the other one?
WEF?
Uh, no, the other one, United Nations. Yeah, they were
No, that's
very much,
nefarious.
yes, yeah. And so I think I dodged a bit of a bullet because I mainly went in because I'm really interested in astrology and psychology and things like that. And the fact that this was esoteric, so it was the whole other, hidden, unseen. It was the ageless wisdom teachings. It was along the lines of, we studied the blue books of Alice Bailey, and we looked a little bit into Helena Blavatsky and all that sort of stuff. And because I've always been interested in mystery and mythology and that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, when I years later found out about what actually goes on at the higher levels of Freemasonry, and also, the United Nations and things like that, it's like, oh my gosh, like there was a whole agenda there that I had absolutely no idea about, because I just thought it was all about learning about, astrology and the human psyche. And we went into a little bit of history and a bit of meditation and uh, what was the meditation? It wasn't sort of Buddha. Well, I think some of it might have been Buddhist type philosophy, but yeah, there was a whole mixed bag of stuff going on anyway. But yeah. So with your research into, the lost history and things like that, how did you sort of come across that? How did you get into that and what led you there?
It was Max Egan. Max
Oh,
Egan is
yeah,
the person that exposed me to it all. And
yeah.
I remember saying to him, this is a few years ago now, saying to him that, I'm telling people about Tartaria, and you introduced me to this, but a lot of people aren't listening. They think I'm mad. They think that it's some sort of false flag or a psyop that's been put out there to misdirect and distract us. And he said to me that if you can just wake one person up, then you might have saved a life. Because to understand Tartaria is to understand how resets work and the events that take place in order for a reset to actually be successful, if you like. And because history does repeat itself and things go around in cycles. So looking at what happened in 1776, the Great Reset, and as some people would say, the introduction of Satan's little season, or the beginning of New World Order, as stated on the back of the American dollar bill, to understand how that took place and to examine that and see what happened to the previous civilization gives us an idea of what they're doing now in the current Great Reset. And we can see very similar events taking place. The floods, fires, earthquakes, and so on, and the suppression where people have said for the last, well, since 2020, FEMA camps were all going to be sent off, and people that are speaking out against what's going on. Well, that's exactly what happened last time. We suddenly had asylums appear all over the world, and people were sent to them for not conforming to New World Order. Um, Quite often it was women that were sent because they would kill the husband and father would be killed in battle, and the Lunacy Act meant that if you were widowed because you'd lost your husband in battle, that was grounds for being committed to an asylum. They didn't believe back then that a woman on her own could raise children. Now that wasn't because they actually did believe that. They introduced that particular law because they wanted to take the children away. It's a blank sheet with no history. You can give them a new name, a new narrative, and then reintroduce them into society, knowing nothing about the true past. So you can see this all playing out all over again. And so Tartaria is key to understanding what's going on now. And of course, it's the same people behind it. All paths still very much lead to Rome. You still there? I've lost you. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yeah, I think you muted it.
I
Yeah.
muted myself. Yeah. As I said before we started recording, just for the audience, I've been coughing a bit lately. You might have even noticed in my last podcast, I've been trying to fight off this chest infection I've had for a few weeks. So yeah, so every time I have a little cough, I've been muting. Yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so with the Tartaria, like it amazes me how the penny's only just recently dropped and how it's only just come into our awareness because now when we're looking at these buildings, like these old world buildings, which are in pretty much every, well, definitely every capital city, but even in some of the smaller towns and places, it's only recently that we started to question about how they were built or who they were built by. Because if you think, even Australia, like we're supposedly a relatively new nation that was discovered by Captain
Hmm.
James Cook in the 1770, I think it was, and then the first
Yeah, of
fleet
course it
came
was.
over at I don't know the exact date, so-called date, but to go from that and horse and carriage and primitive tools and things to have these buildings, like even here in Brisbane, the capital city of the state that I'm in Queensland, and you've got a lot of buildings that have got the red brick, or you've got um, the town hall with the big tower and things like that. And you look at the way they're built, there's no way that that could have been built in that time frame with the resources they would have had. And where did the things come from? Like, because back then it took months and months and months to come on a boat from the other side of the realm to here. So it just doesn't add up. But for years we didn't even question it. We had our blinkers on, and we it was not even in our radar at all. So I wonder what it was in the last few years that what what do you think? Like, why have we all of a sudden the pennies dropped and we're like seeing things really for what they are now?
It's due to a CIA document being declassified.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep.
yeah, which I have. So the CIA document it is quite damning actually, and it does in black and white clearly state that Tartaria and its history was to be suppressed and
Wow.
completely hidden. And it actually states that very much along the lines of let's make this blatantly clear. We are going to delete their history in no uncertain terms.
Yep.
Now that was released a few years back, and it was that people found it because you can go onto the CIA website and actually download that PDF. When that actually was put out there, when it was declassified, a few people found it. I guess by accident, because it might be that people didn't know about Tartaria before, although there are old books about it. I mean, Marco Polo in his book, The Travels of Marco Polo, actually wrote about it. Peter Fleming, the brother of the author Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels, he wrote about his time and travels in Tartary. And it's a very different place to what the mainstream narrative would tell you. They would like you to think that the region known as Tartaria, which is Russia, Eastern Europe, Asia, and quite a bit of the Northern Hemisphere, that actually that's full of nomads. They lived in tents. They didn't really do much. They were kind of wild. Um, but when you read Marco Polo's book, or you read Peter Fleming's book, you'll see that actually they're talking about an incredible empire with the most beautiful structures everywhere, these palaces and temples absolutely everywhere, and the Great Wall of Tartaria, which people would refer to as the Great Wall of China. But the way in which it was suppressed and hidden was to first of all call the Tartarian Empire the Mongolian Empire, and then make out that the most significant ruler of Mongolia, Genghis Khan, was some sort of bloodthirsty warmonger, which he wasn't at all. And that's quite common. That's a common trick. They will invert someone. Yeah, today they do it in more ways than one, but often in the past, people that have been painted as being quite nefarious characters were anything but, and often more benevolent, and that's history being written by the victors. We've got the same thing happening in the Second World War. Here
Yep.
in the UK, people would jump up and down if you criticised Winston Churchill, but if you look at actually what he did and what he was really like, and actually do some proper research rather than watching a documentary on BBC about him, you actually find that he was a vile man and committed acts of genocide.
Yep.
So, again, our history has not only been hidden, but it's been falsified along with figures. And some figures have been introduced to give backstories for certain events, like Napoleon Bonaparte, for example.
Yep.
Um, so they can blame people, and then they can detach themselves from taking any responsibility for what they orchestrated.
Yep. Yep. And when you talk about Napoleon Bonaparte being a fictional character, do you think um, he could have been a conglomerate of different people, or was the whole thing fictional? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
He's based upon Apollo.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, so that's what he's based upon. So if you look at the name, it's quite clever. So the first name is based upon Apollyon,
Yep.
um, So then you've got Bonaparte, which is very clever,
Yes.
because that's literally what happened. Now you got to think with him, there's no living descendants, and that's normally strategic when they are creating a character. So I'm not saying that there wasn't a person like Napoleon in charge of, like a general or a leader in charge, but it was certainly Napoleon Bonaparte doesn't appear to be that person because it is based on something else.
Yep.
Very old mythology.
Yep.
Um, God of War, and
Yep.
so by his mid-20s, is the most powerful person in Europe that can take on an army of any size, often quite heavily outnumbered, and still defeat them using these strategies. But when he wasn't doing that, he was writing romantic novels and poetry. But the key is no living descendants. Now, Sonny from Sonny and Cher,
Yep.
he came out and said he was a descendant, but that was debunked. But so that's crucial to their narrative. Let's invent someone, then we can blame them, give them an incredible backstory, like they've done with Nikola Tesla.
I was just going to
Um,
say that. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been researching Nikola Tesla for a very long time, and you'll often find when people talk about Tesla that that's someone that they weren't taught about at school, which is strange because if we follow his story and his patents, you wouldn't have the lighting on in school, and you wouldn't have electricity operating like it does without him. So that's quite strange that for many people he will be quite a recent name. And for most people, when you say Tesla, they'll be thinking of the car manufacturer and the, rather strange character Elon Musk.
Yep.
So with Nikola Tesla, first of all, I don't know if he existed or not, and I haven't met anybody that met him. I've met people that will say, of course he existed, but that's an opinion because they can't prove it. And that's the problem with a lot of the information out there and a lot of our opinions too, that it's difficult to substantiate them, and AI is making that a lot worse. So for some time now, I've been trying to find anybody out there that had family that were friends with him or members of his family that are related to him in some way, and there aren't any. So I contacted his museum, and they said that they weren't aware of anybody. I then said to them, well, this is a pioneer in electronics, if you like. This is a pioneer in technology, and I find it very strange that there isn't any video footage of him anywhere in the world. There are recordings of his voice, but of course we can't substantiate that.
Yep.
There are just a few photographs of him, the early one, which looks very much like Frank Zappa, and that's another rabbit hole in itself. So they said to me that they believe the reason there's no video footage of him, but there is of Edison and there is of Einstein, is because he was camera shy. And I said, well, that doesn't stack up with the story of him giving lectures, being paid to attend dinner parties, speaking on the radio, giving presentations publicly.
Yep.
How do you sort of join those two dots together if he was camera shy? Oh, well, we don't know. I said, right, so we got no living descendants, no video footage. He never wrote anything down, yet when he died, the FBI removed 2 van loads of files from his hotel room, from a man who didn't write anything down. And he claims everything came to him in a vision, so he didn't have to even practice or experiment. Everything that he did worked first time exactly how it predicted to, and came in a vision that he believed was coming from the Venetians. So he was communicating with the Venetians, never wrote anything down. Everything he did worked straight away. He had no living descendants. There's no video footage of him either. I find that a little bit strange. Now, having sort of spent years researching him, I want him to have existed because the man on paper is a genius and changed the course of history for the better, devoted his entire life to getting free energy to everybody on Earth, no matter where they live, so they can share free energy and there
Yep.
isn't somebody somewhere profiting and controlling it. Now, that's a fantastic, an incredible thing to set out to do. So nobody wants him to have existed more than I do.
Yep.
But a lot of people watching this will say he definitely did exist. Well, my answer to that would be, can you share me the information that you have to substantiate that claim?
Yep.
Because I want him to have existed, but I don't believe that he did. I think he's another Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah. Yeah. And I only realized that recently, I think after I'd listened to one of your other podcasts or interviews with someone else, because I think you asked, I don't know if it was you or your the person you were interviewing asked if there was anyone that you could either alive or dead or past or present, if you could, bring them to you right now and speak to them, who would it be? And mine was always Tesla. And then after hearing what you had to say, and it made so much sense, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, um, I mean, obviously there could have been a few people that were along the lines of, you know, doing the patents, the inventions, things like that, maybe a group of people, but to actually not be able to find any lineage of that one particular person, that, yeah, that's a little bit suspicious. So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think to look at all the patents, because obviously to get a patent, the experiment has to be successful.
yes,
So if you look at actually what he achieved, it's incredible.
yeah,
Um, so my guess is, and it is a guess because as I said, nobody's able to prove that he existed. People just have a strong belief that he did or a strong belief that he didn't, but we can't prove any of that. My guess is that if he existed, was reverse engineering technology from the previous civilization. Could go
yep,
back to Atlantis because I do believe Tartaria is an echo of Atlantis.
yep,
So he was either researching and repurposing previous technology, or it's a group of people, or it's deep state. It's the Jesuits. They come up with a story of somebody. They can pin everything to them and say, well, this man was a genius. Look at everything he invented. And then it's another box ticked.
yep,
And that's what they do with the buildings that you mentioned earlier on. Buildings everywhere that we can't really explain. And, you'll look at somewhere in Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, and look at these magnificent buildings. And the first thing you would ask is, what was the population at the time,
mm,
and how many of them were skilled craftsmen, stonemasons, bricklayers, glaziers, and so on? And the answer to that will be there'll be very few.
yep,
So then the narrative will tell us that these people were brought in from other towns, yet at the same time, the other towns they were brought in from were having similar buildings built. You then won't find anywhere any kilns for the bricks to have been made. You won't find a quarry nearby where the granite and marble came from. The architect won't have built anything like that before or again afterwards. So I think that that's what they do, and it just ticks a box. And it was done, I think, quite quickly.
yep,
So I think Tesla's story, Napoleon's story, the story behind all of these buildings, it's kind of not rushed, but almost in the assumption that nobody's ever going to go back and worry about who built this all those years ago and then examine the architect.
yep,
No one's got the time to do that. So I think Tesla is just another example of just creating a narrative to explain things and hope that no one digs too deep.
yep,
And because we're so distracted by everything else.
yep, exactly. Yeah. And so about the world fairs that you sort of researched as well, like, um, do you want to talk a little bit about the world fairs?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I call them whitewashed and brainwashed
yeah,
because that's what exactly what they were. These were old cities from the previous civilization.
yeah,
Um, and what they did was they whitewashed them. So quite often they were painted white, and many of them were called white cities. The narrative is that they were built quite quickly. Some of them in under a year, approximately 9 months in a lot of cases.
yeah,
There wasn't the infrastructure to build any of these, or the workforce. or the skilled labour to build any of these either. So if you start looking, that first of all is one of the anomalies. Then you'll find that a lot of them were destroyed, many by fire, shortly after they opened. So they've spent, if we follow the narrative, they've spent an incredible amount of money rushing to build a very impressive city to show off technology.
Yep.
Often it's sort of the British Empire really giving a flex of muscle, showing how civilized and advanced they are, and then on display often um, ethnic tribes on display showing their cultures and kind of labeled as savages and very crude and basic. So it was whitewashing history too. So people would attend. I don't think anything like the numbers that we're told. They would attend these events, have a look round, see all this technology, see what these people are capable of achieving. Look at this magnificent building. Look at the technology that's going to be available soon for us, that's on display inside, and then burn the place down as soon as you're done with it, and keep the odd building here and there for governmental use. It could be part of a university, it could become something that's connected to government offices and so on. And so that's what they were, mass brainwashing. And they took place all over the world, right across the world, places as far flung as Samoa. They were having world's fairs, Tasmania, everywhere
Yep.
had one of these events. Australia had dozens of them in some very strange places as well, some of them quite remote in the middle of nowhere. So you get people to come along, um, brainwash them, and kind of they leave thinking that really it's these were the British Empire,
Yep.
showing everybody how incredible the white people are and how basic and primitive people who aren't white are, and whitewashing their history at the same time. And that some of them had human zoos where they would take, someone from a tribe in Africa and stick them in a cage or put them on display as an exhibit, sometimes with their families.
Yep.
Um, so that's what it was all about. And Charles Darwin actually attended the Great Exhibition, the first proper World's Fair in London, and came away saying how disgusting it was. It was the British Empire boasting about how advanced and superior it is to everybody else in the world, and how primitive they all are at the same time that people are living on the streets in abject poverty and dying.
Yep.
So to have this big impressive event take place that cost allegedly an incredible amount of money to build and put to actually put on. At the same time, people are dying because they can't afford to eat and are living, on the streets, is disgusting. And that's
Yep.
exactly what these World's Fairs were. They were disgusting. They insulted the people who built the buildings to start with. They insulted the indigenous people, the real forefathers were insulted. And then then they burn them down before people start asking too many
Questions.
questions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And at these world fairs, this is where some of the was it the Cabbage Patch babies or the babies in bottles and things?
Incubator babies.
Incubator babies, that's right. Did
Hmm.
you want to talk a little bit about that for people that don't know what
Yeah,
they
sure.
were?
So the Cabbage Patch babies and the incubator babies are connected, but the incubator babies, when on display, started off in Europe and then travelled to America. Um, Now, that was by somebody called Martin Cooney, who claimed to be a doctor but wasn't, that he had no medical qualifications at all. And they're based upon an incubator being used from a poultry farm in a maternity ward in Paris, and it was adapted, and then Martin Cooney took them and started putting premature babies in them and then put them on display, which is something strange to do, really, because if you consider that this baby wouldn't have survived, it's critical.
Mm,
And so what you do is put it in an incubator on display as a sideshow. Now that doesn't really stack up, and I wouldn't have thought the parents would be very happy to
no.
go along with that. So there is something strange going on there. At the same time, you had Alice Guy, the first narrated movie director and actress, bring out a film called The Cabbage Fairy, in which she is a fairy plucking babies from cabbages. You can find it on YouTube, and then these babies are sold. Now, she says she took the inspiration from going to a World's Fair and seeing Martin Cooney's exhibition of the incubator babies, But the problem is, her film came out a year before Martin Cooney first displayed them. So that's obviously a lie.
Yep.
She was also as I said, the first narrated movie director, producer, and actress. But up until that point, she'd spent 2 years as a secretary working for a small movie production company in Paris. So she goes from 2 years as a secretary to the first narrated movie director, actress, producer
Yep.
um, in the world.
Yep.
So that's a little bit odd.
Bit of a
Again,
red flag.
no living descendants.
Yes.
So her
Yep.
next film's called the Midwife to the Upper Classes, where she's selling babies to middle class couples that again she's plucking from cabbages. So these babies were on display, and at exactly the same time that they went on display in America, there was an outcry saying we have an issue with there being too many children. We're overrun. There are a lot of orphans. We don't know what to do with them. So it seems strange that at a time when you had too many children, allegedly, that they would be doing something to intervene to make sure that they could prolong the life or give a life to a baby that wouldn't naturally have survived. So it's a
Yep.
contradiction. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done it. Of course, they should do that. If you can save a life, save a life. But it seems very strange that you would go to that effort at a time when there was a problem.
Yep.
Now, in America, they said the babies that went on display in the incubators in, say, Chicago, for example, came from maternity hospitals in New York. Well, that's a hell of a distance to travel with a
Mm.
baby that is critical.
Yep.
Then in London, they came from a maternity ward in Paris. So again, that's a bit of a travel
Yep.
for them. So that doesn't make sense. But one of the great things that helps us with this narrative is that one of the advertising spins for the incubator babies was that they could actually increase the time it. Sorry, I beg your pardon. They could reduce the amount of time it took to get the baby from being premature to actually being 9 months. They could speed that up. So what sort of technology are we talking about there, where they could actually increase that? That to have that capability, that technology. So if the
Yep.
baby should have been in an incubator for say a month, that they could actually get that down to a few days, and it would be fully grown.
Yep.
So there's something strange going on there. The other thing is that if these babies came from hospitals, what did the mother have to say about the baby going off on tour?
Yep.
And then what did they have to say about the fact that you could buy the babies at the World's Fairs? How comfortable were the parents with that?
Yep.
Now, where did the babies come from? Where are the parents? How did they manage to speed up the growth of a baby by being inside one of these? So my guess is these babies were not naturally conceived.
Yes. So
That,
there's a
that,
good segue into the cloning process.
yeah. Well, people think
Yep.
that's a relatively new thing that companies like Clonaid
Mm.
that haven't been around that long, really, are quite new. The ability to clone is a relatively new thing, and
Yep.
obviously we know that Clonaid. Go on their website; they'll clone you. We know that that goes on. We know that they're doing it in Mexico, where the laws are lax. That they're doing it in Korea as well. So we know that takes place, and we know that you can go and get your pet cloned if it dies. So but then again, we kind of think that cloning a mammal is something quite recent. That actually Dolly the sheep was the first, and Dolly the sheep's interesting because you mentioned the Knights Templar earlier on,
Yep.
and the Knights Templar obviously are connected with Roslin Chapel in Scotland. Well, the Roslin Institute is where Dolly the sheep was created. So
Oh.
you can get a
Yep.
feel there for where the technology came
Yep.
from and who has this technology and
Yep.
how it's being shared. So if we consider that the technology to produce a clone is relatively new, then I would ask people to read Genesis in the Bible again,
Mm-hmm.
because to remove the rib from one being to create another is how you would clone.
Yep.
Now, some will argue that, well, it's just a metaphor. My answer to that is it's a bloody good one.
Yes.
It's describing cloning.
Yep.
And if that book's as old as we're told to believe it is, then way back then they were writing about the procedure to clone and create life from another being.
Yep.
So metaphorically or not doesn't matter. they've written about how to do it. But of course, we know that the Bible is based upon the Epic of Gilgamesh, as is the Torah. All religious, if you like, organized religion is based upon the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the first and oldest text that we have. The story of Noah, everything is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And we know in that the beings that we refer to as being called the Anunnaki came down, took the Neanderthal man, turned Neanderthal man with a few tweaks here and there into the Homo sapien to go and mine and become a slave race. So the cloning appears everywhere. Whether you're looking at the Epic of Gilgamesh, which anybody who's into, you know, looking into religion should certainly read that first.
Yeah.
Um, and it's in Genesis too. So it appears that there are bloodline families that have this technology, and it's been available for a very very long time because the Epic of Gilgamesh, you're talking about 250,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the cloning, in recent times, like I've noticed there's a lot of people in high places that look very similar to so-called Egyptian rulers and things like that. I mean, I guess anything can be fabricated, especially now too with AI and CGI and things like that. But a lot of people have done a lot of research into the different bloodlines, um, but also into the cloning. And I believe, um, did you come across was it Donald Marshall's work to
Yeah,
do with people in the entertainment industry and the cloning stations and things like that? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because there seems to be a lot of people in those places in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry, in the music industry. They all look very similar. I mean, yes, there are certain bloodlines, and yes, there are a lot of them that are related, and we're finding out that more and more now, as I discussed with Mark recently, and with his recent book of Joining the Dots. And the Sheep Farm Boys do that really well too, with regards to a lot of these people in these higher places are all related. But I've started to question whether some of it is not just that, but cloning. What are your thoughts on that with people, that we see in the public eye being clones?
well, Donald Marshall's perhaps given us more information than anybody else on this. um, and the story goes, and I think Mark Devlin speaks about this quite often. It's to do with selling your soul.
Yep,
What they don't realize is they're selling their soul to the Illuminati. So when they sign the contract, when they're approached and offered the opportunity of a lifetime to become richer than their wildest dreams and more famous than they could have ever desired, that they are asked there and then by the Illuminati, and it's normally in a white office. Everything in it is white. It's quite almost clinical. So they're taken into this office. They're asked to sign on the dotted line. They're told that if they don't sign, then they will have their career hijacked, and that nothing will come of their work, and their dreams will be shattered. And so they sign because they don't believe for one moment that the soul is something that exists or can be sold. But what they don't realize is they're signing the right to be cloned.
yep,
And then that's what takes place. They're then cloned. And the clones are used for lots of different reasons. So, for example, let's say these powerful bloodline families and people connected with the Illuminati are having a dinner party or one of their strange gatherings, and everybody would like to have some fun with, I don't know, Beyonce, for example. Well, they can play with her clone for the evening, and at the end
yep,
of it, they can kill it. They can do whatever they want, and they can make as many of these as they like, and Beyonce will be none the wiser for it. So that's the first aspect, and the information is transferred from the living person to the clone during REM. So when they go to sleep in the stage of REM, that's when the information is the memory is transferred. So when you speak to the clone will be up to date with everything that's going on and everything that happened today. Um,
yep,
Now, the danger is if that celebrity decides that they don't like what's going on, or they're uncomfortable about the pressure, or want to buy themselves out of the contract and want to retire, or no longer like Whitney Houston want to give public interviews or appear in public anymore, they want to retire and have a break from it all. That's when they do some damage. So if you go against them and don't toe the line, they will reverse the transfer of memory from the clone to the original being. And by that, all the trauma that the clone has experienced is now downloaded to the actual person. So they'll wake up the next morning in horrific pain,
Yep.
severely traumatized, but didn't actually physically experience that themselves. And that can lead to aneurysms and heart attacks.
Yep.
And this is where the 27 Club comes in. But a lot of other people along the way that have been outspoken have just been removed as a direct result. But the other element to cloning a celebrity is that you can get them to do more than one thing. So Kevin Hart's spoken out about this and said that the reason that he can be in two different films in 1 year, be on Twitter 1 minute, an interview on TV the next, and then he's on the radio, and then he's doing a commercial. He's in LA, then he's in New York, then he's in he's in Paris and Milan, all at the same bloody time. They said, "How do you do all of this?" And he said, "There's a good two or three of me. I've been cloned. I've been telling people this. I've
Yep.
been given permission to tell people this, but you're not listening to me."
Yep.
Britney Spears came out and said she was cloned, and then brought out a music video showing her smashing up and literally destroying a cloning center. Um, they're all doing it. They're all showing us this, but in such a way that we dismiss it as fantasy or fiction.
Yep.
So that's the other side of the clone. But of course, ultimately, you could clone Mark Zuckerberg, take the real Mark Zuckerberg, stick him in one of these dumbs, one of the underground military bases, have him down there working away doing what he's told, while the clone is out there in the public doing what that's told. So
Yep.
there's also that as well. It gives them total control over someone in the mainstream, someone in the public's eye, constantly in a position perhaps to influence. And that's what it's ultimately about.
Yep. And there has been so many in the entertainment industry that have dropped um, clues. I mean, some have
Mm,
outright said it, as you said. Some of them have dropped clues. A lot of it is in the music, the movies, things like
yeah.
that. But the everyday person on the street, as Mark Devlin calls them, the normies, they would have such a hard time wrapping their heads around it. As you say, they'd think it's just fantasy or it's just ridiculous and how could that be? And yeah, but
It's dangerous to challenge those people. They are the NPCs. They can't be woken up,
yeah,
and it's dangerous to even try. And they're part of our infrastructure. They have no inner dialogue. They
yeah,
don't question anything. They'll roll up their sleeve and take whatever's on offer. They
yeah,
read the papers. They watch the news. They're programmed. They'll vote. They actually think that voting makes a difference. So these people, you can't wake up. It doesn't matter what you show them; they're not going to believe it. And so we have to accept the fact that there is a large percentage of the population that are never going to wake up, and they can't, and they're not supposed to. And I think those people are the ones that will fall
yeah,
for the next reset. It will be us that come out the other end, one
yeah,
way or another, fighting or celebrating
yeah,
when this sort of new world order's over and the Great Reset's done. I think
yeah,
we'll come out the other end on top. And those people, unfortunately, I don't personally believe those people will be joining us,
yeah,
which means we're going to lose some loved ones too. Dolores Cannon refers to these people as having no soul.
mm,
I think that's quite a harsh way of describing them, but I think they don't have a connection, and the connection to our past, which is carried in our DNA. We carry the memories of our ancestors in our DNA. We know that to be fact, and water carries memory, and we are the majority of our structure is water, so we
yeah,
know we're carrying a lot of memory, and I think that that's why so many of us don't think that what's going on is right, because we know inside us that it isn't right,
yeah,
and we're carrying this information. So yeah, the average person, the normies, or the sheep, whatever you want to call them,
yeah,
They can't be woken up. You get the odd one that's on the fence and you can give them a shove.
Yeah,
But the majority of them, no, it's a fight you can't win.
yeah, exactly. And that might also be something to do with the 144,000. Like I was speaking to Campbell recently, and I'm not saying literally there's only 144,000 um, of, souls, like switched on, sentient souls. But maybe it's a metaphor that there's only a certain percentage of the population that are here and aware and going to be part of the process of what's going on.
Hmm.
And the rest are just the fill-ins, the NPCs,
Yeah,
yeah, just there for distraction as well, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
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 I mean, ultimately, we couldn't possibly know what the true figure is because there are tribes out there. We don't know the population numbers.
yeah,
I have no doubt that there are islands and continents that we don't have access to and
yeah,
can't see
yeah,
that contain races of people. And it's a little bit like when they did the world population estimate in 1776 and said that it was 770 million. At no point had anybody sort of gone through the Amazon and started counting. At no point had anybody counted the indigenous peoples in America, North America, and Canada, and nor would they have done that in places like Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. So it's a wild guess, I would say. We just don't know what the true population of Earth is, or this realm, and we certainly wouldn't know what the population is of people that have a soul or a connection. So I think that's probably just a guesstimate.
yeah, yeah. And this whole, thing about the overpopulation, like it seems that way when you're crammed into cities, but that's the way they've designed it. But if you go out, I mean, you can get on a plane and travel across the country or across the world, and there's vast, vast areas of unpopulated, uninhabited areas. Not to say they haven't been discovered, but there's certainly people, no people living in those areas. We all seem to be corralled into these cities and coastal regions and things, especially here in Australia. Not so much in America because most of America, even in the midland section of America, there's towns and things and industry going on. But in Australia, pretty much you've got all the coastal regions, and then you've got Ayers Rock and Alice Springs in the centre. And the rest of the desert, there's not much going on. So, but yeah, the world population thing's been something that I've questioned for quite a while. Because you think about it, like even a couple of generations ago, especially pre the birth control pill, most families were quite large. Like my dad was one of six. My husband's grandmother was one of 13. I think my nana was one of seven. Nowadays, like I know heaps of people in my life that haven't had children or they've only had one or two. So even when you look at it in that respect, how can the population, how can we be overpopulated when the birth rate's dropped? And also since 2020 and what's gone on there, there's been a lot more, sudden departures and things like that. So this whole narrative of the overpopulation is just another part of the lie, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And I
Yeah,
mentioned earlier on the population in 1776 of Earth was 770 million. And for anybody who's got a pen and paper or a calculator on their phone, they can punch these figures around. They doubled it within 100 years. Now that's quite hard to do, but as you said, a lot of people, great grandparents, great great grandparents, would have large families. My granddad was one of 11. Now, often, going back a bit older, a bit further than that, then a lot of them wouldn't survive. A lot of them
yeah,
didn't really, even reach adolescence. But if we look at the sudden urge and encouragement to have lots and lots of children compared to now, what they've done now is made it financially difficult for anybody to have a large family. whether it's just renting or buying a bigger home, of being able to put food on the table for them all. Mum and dad are now both out at work. So they've made it as difficult as possible for us to do that because they're trying to slow down the population so they've got less people to get rid of through this reset. But as I said, 770 million in 1776, they doubled it to 1.35 billion 100 years later, which is quite difficult to do
Yep.
because you would assume that back then, we didn't have the medical technology, if you like, to be able to sustain uh, premature babies, and it was obviously a lot more risky in certain circumstances actually giving birth. But the interesting thing is, and the reason you need a calculator is that during the same period of time, that 100-year period, 3.35 billion people died. Well, how does that work?
Yep.
770 million people. 100 years later, you've doubled it, but during the same period of time, three times the amount have died.
Yep.
How?
Yep.
How can you lose 3.35 billion people from a population at the beginning of 770 million?
Yep.
How does that work?
It's probably
So,
the same as what happened in the United States in that 2001 year, where they lost all that money. So someone had it behind the couch or underneath the bed.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. No, it's just when you really start to um, dissect and look behind the curtain and really start to put critical thinking into place, the whole thing is just it stinks to high heaven, really,
Hmm.
doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, it depends how much time you want to commit to
yeah,
researching whatever part of it is. So we mentioned the world's fairs, and I've just mentioned the population. So all of these things, these magnificent cities, these white cities, Tartaria, and I know we use Tartaria. Really, we're talking about the old world, and Tartaria is just a region, a massive expanse of land, if you like.
yeah,
But it's a blanket term that's gaining momentum, so I kind of stick with it. But so if we look at these Tartarian cities, that there is a very weak story behind that they all end in fire, some of them built in 9 months with no labour really available, all materials, no record of where any of the stone came from. Um, you can pick that one apart. You can pick apart your local town hall or government buildings. You can pick apart the world population, the incubator babies. How they were able to transport critically uh, ill baby infants, newborns, prems from one part of a country to another.
yeah,
They not only survive but then get sold at the end of it. It speed up the amount of time it takes to get them to 9 month, what would be 9 months old. Um, and then look at Napoleon Bonaparte, look at Nikola Tesla, look at all of these things.
yeah,
And Tartaria is not a rabbit hole; it's a warren.
yeah,
It's got so many aspects to it. Each one um, enables the person researching or reading to see our narrative fall apart in front of their
yeah,
very eyes.
yeah, exactly. Which brings me back to one of my first questions about I wonder why now we're only starting to see it. I know you said there's that CIA document,
Yeah, that was the
but
catalyst.
yeah, but also I think it's just that because the veil is thinning and because people are ready now to critically think, whereas before we were all under some sort of spell, or I don't know, we were just so in the thick of the that I was saying, you're in the middle of the forest, you can't see the wood for the trees. But
Mm,
I think so many of
yeah.
us now have been able to step back a bit and have a look, from a higher perspective and start to, join some dots and put some puzzle pieces together. But I mean, like I said, I've lived in this city. Well, I don't live in the city, but Brisbane City's not far from me. But I've lived here most of my life. I came out from England, as I said, when I was a young child, and we settled here, and I've stayed here the rest of my life. And I've been into the city hundreds and hundreds of times over my lifetime, and never once until the recent, last few years started to question some of these buildings. I just took it for
Mm,
granted, and yeah. So I think there's a consciousness shift as well. It's not just a document being, released to the public, but I think there's a certain thing that's happened with our consciousness so that we're now able to see things in a broader perspective or with different eyes and things like that. Like that veil is definitely thinning. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I
Yeah,
totally agree. It's almost like the people that can wake up and the people that are awake have suddenly come to life.
yeah,
And these were the people before that were perhaps thinking, what was really going on with the two buildings, well, ultimately more than two, um,
yeah,
that collapsed in New York.
yeah,
What did we land on the moon? Is there
yeah,
something going on in Antarctica? Is there something beyond that, beyond the ice? What about Agartha? We are those people that have always found it fascinating,
yeah,
the thought that there are things going on that we don't know about, and almost exciting.
yeah,
And then slowly, and I think perhaps 2020 was the real icing on the cake for a lot of us. It sort of changed from being something that's fascinating to something that's deeply concerning.
yes,
And I think that 2020 probably gave a lot of the people that are awake a really good kick up the backside to say,
yeah,
look, things are getting serious now. Before they were playing around, lots of people have died.
yeah,
They've had wars for no reason. What's gone on in the Middle East as a result of the two, oh, three, four buildings in New York was actually just to destroy the tomb of Gilgamesh,
yeah,
and it gave them a cover story to do that. We start looking at all of these things with a different set of eyes, I suppose. That before it was interesting, and could there be a conspiracy here? To actually now looking back and saying, "My God, this is actually what they really did,"
yeah,
and this is terrifying. So I think seeing that across the world what they were prepared to do to people in 2020 has given all of us a wake up call that it's no longer an interesting pastime to read about conspiracies. It's now important that we look into these things critically,
yeah,
to protect ourselves ultimately.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, yeah, people had a lot more time on their hands too, in
Mm,
2020. So that also allowed them to do the research that, before we were just kept so busy.
mm,
And it's almost like the world stood still for, 18 months, 2 years. And I use the term stood still loosely. But yeah, just the way that we went about our lives was just so radically changed
mm,
suddenly, that, yeah, people that always did think there is something wrong with this place had time to then delve into these different things. Some of
yeah,
us had already started anyway. Like I think I'd always had a feeling that there's something wrong about this place, but I think I started to wake up to, the banking system and the birth certificate and all that sort of stuff probably back in,
mm,
the mid to late, uh, or 2000, yeah,
mm,
2005 to 2010, I suppose. And then from probably 2016 as well, when there was all the flat earth, the Mandela effect, and all that sort of stuff. And I think the internet's helped as well, as much as they're trying to scrub a lot of history even there. And now I'm finding that a lot of stuff that I was able to research before seems to have just gone. So now it's like, screen grabbing and downloading what we can, because they're even changing the narrative and changing what we can look at online. Because I don't
yeah,
think when they brought out the internet that they realized how quickly it would be used for the likes of us to be able to get the information we needed. I think they were thinking it was going to be more distraction, was obviously more surveillance, for them to surveil us. But I think they probably underestimated a lot of us as to what we could use it for the good.
yeah. I totally
Yeah,
agree. I mean, that I think ultimately that whether you're looking at the internet, whether you're looking at AI or smartphones or whatever. I think that all of this is deep state. I think that originally it was designed to program us, monitor us. Um, People claim that your average smartphone is taking a photograph every 20 seconds and storing it somewhere. We know everything's being recorded, monitored, and logged. The organisation that does that, incidentally, is called Five Eyes. Five Eyes, and
Yeah.
that's worth people looking into if they haven't
I'll
heard of
write
it
that
before.
down.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
five FIVE, Five Eyes.
Yeah.
That's the what it's really it's America and Britain primarily, but it's a worldwide venture. It's a bit like the Antarctic Treaty. You know, countries that are fighting each other will still stand firm over certain issues, which is very strange.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what I think is going on. And obviously with people like the founders of Google, the founders of Microsoft, we're given this and Apple and Facebook and so many others, we're given this story that they start off in a bedroom or a garage. Normally it's a garage. Um, and these people came from nowhere, and they were friends at high school or college or whatever, and look what they've done. And it's just not true. They're all deep state, and these people are put in place to be kind of the spokesperson or some kind of bloody savior. Look at
Yeah.
what they've done for us, and it's not. They're all controlled. So whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Google, that these things were put in place to actually monitor us and force feed us information and
Yeah.
program subliminally, sometimes obviously programming us
Yeah.
is the sole intention, monitoring and programming. So it's a mass surveillance operated by Five Eyes. And what they didn't realize, as you quite rightly said, that we were going to start sharing information a bit quicker than they could remove it.
Yeah.
And by the time they've removed my post and shadow banned me, 100 people have shared it,
Yeah.
and then 100 people might have shared each one of those, and that's the great thing about the internet. I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it, the internet? Because for all the good it does more harm, I believe. And I use
Yeah.
it all the time, and a lot of us do for research. And I
Yeah.
use Facebook to get my information out there. But the harm that Facebook causes is incredible. And but that's got to be the one blessing, that it enables us to share information far quicker than they can take it down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's for people that still can't wrap their heads around the fact that these, Facebook and the phone, the iPhones and well, all the devices are listening and surveilling. All you've got to do is realize, even the voice to skull technology is coming out now because I've even been thinking of something, haven't even verbalized it out loud to anyone in the household. And next minute, I'm getting stuff on my feed that's
Mm,
relating to something that I was thinking about.
mm,
And, we can have a conversation with somebody, and the next minute, you've got ads popping up for something that you were talking about, you were interested in, or yeah, so for people that are still denying that this is a real thing, they really need to, um, realize what's going on because, yeah. But I think a lot of so-called normies are, because I have a few, clients and neighbors and things that certainly aren't into any of this sort of conversation. And even they are now starting to say, oh, just the other day, was talking to so and so about something, and now all of a sudden, on Facebook, I'm getting all these ads for the same thing I was, um, and TVs like the smart TVs and the smart fridges and the smart vacuum cleaners and the Internet of Things. I think people are starting to realize how
mm,
much it is taking over and,
mm.
observing, listening. Yeah. So
I think
it's,
anything with the word smart in front of it is a clue.
yeah,
Over here we have smart motorways. They're just designed to fine and punish people
yeah,
by quickly changing the speed limit. So
yeah,
dropping the speed limit down very quickly by 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour. So you go through a camera, only just having seen that zap, nothing you can do. Of course, it's slightly different. You could argue that it's a photograph of a vehicle that isn't moving.
Yeah,
And if it's a motoring offence, I need the details of the person I've offended.
yeah, exactly.
And
And
I
I
need an
think
independent witness too.
yes, I think a lot of people are starting to open up to that as well. Like we've got a group here in Australia called Know Your Rights Group, and there's lots of that sort of community where they're helping people to fight back against the fines and the overreach, and to sort of um, take back their power, I guess. And like I've even just recently come across through Campbell and Kelly of Tartaria, Australia. I went to one of their events recently, and there was a group there called TASA, Terrace Australis States Assembly, and they're pretty much into educating people to redo their status basically and their standing so that they are actually outside of that system, so that they can't be targeted. They're not going to be hauled in, for speeding fines and this and that. And some of these people apparently have been traveling for many years, unlicensed, unregistered, and for the most part have been left alone, because once the system realizes who they are and the fact that they have taken their true power back and they know who they are, they just back away and, okay, there's one that can see, let's leave them alone, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm hoping that that's going to be um, more widespread, with more and more people wanting to do that and step outside of those silly systems that we've been
mm,
imprisoned by for such a long time.
mm.
Yeah. So, well, it's been great chatting with you. We could go on for a lot longer, but yeah. Um, so if you want to just tell people where they can find your books and that sort of thing, and what you've got coming up, or anything else that you'd want people to know about at this stage.
Yeah, sure. The easiest place to find me and to read my research and if they want to buy books to get signed copies is my website. I've got a YouTube channel and I've got a Facebook group and I'm on Facebook as well. And I post every day something thought-provoking, I hope. But my
Yep,
website has links to all of these things. You can get my books on Amazon as well, but if they want signed copies, then my website, which is thetartarianempire.co.uk. That's the best place because it has links to everywhere I am.
yep,
And there are blogs on there that I can't put on social media.
yep,
They're too sensitive. So often when I do that, I'll put on Facebook that there's a new blog. I can't share it on here, but if anyone's interested, here's a link.
yep.
So that's the best place to find me. Obviously, I've written two books. The first one, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids, is about Tartaria and connecting Nikola Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Babies. And the second book, Rise of the Clones, it is about, it's a far greater dive into human cloning, inbreeding, hybrids, um, our genealogy, why certain companies want our DNA on a database somewhere and what's going on with that, and celebrity cloning and so on. A lot of Donald Marshall's research in there too, sort of simplified. Um, that was written because people, I did a poll and said in my first book, which was your favorite chapter? And 76% said it was the bit on the Cabbage Patch Babies and cloning. That's the really,
Yep.
mind-blowing element to it. So it's a deeper dive, but I'm currently working on a book that is a compilation of all of my posts from A to Z. So
Oh, wow.
starting with
Yep,
Agartha and ending with zombies, and in between that we've got a conspiracy theory on Bill Gates, Barack Obama, vampires, obviously Tartaria, Atlantis, AI, alcohol. There's
yep,
there's something for everybody in that.
yep.
But people kept saying to me, "Why don't you make a book? Why don't you put all these in one big book?" So it's 76 chapters,
Oh,
and the one
wow.
I'm writing at the moment, and
Yeah,
that should be out by Christmas.
yeah. Oh, great. That's fantastic. And do you have a title for that yet, or you?
Yeah, and do you know what? I've posted about this on numerous occasions. A lot of people don't like being called a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
I do. because I look at the theory behind conspiracies.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
is exactly what I
What
am.
it is.
So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, so I've decided to call the book exactly what it is, Conspiracy Theories from Agatha to Zombies.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And that whole thing, conspiracy theories, that was a CIA thing anyway,
Yeah.
wasn't it? To do with
Yeah,
JFK. Yeah.
JFK.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't believe what happened, if you even dared to consider that it was his wife that shot him through the head, and I've
Yeah.
seen it, then you are a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. 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 All right. Well, great. Well, I'll put all your links below anyway in the show notes, and they'll also be at the end of the edited video when it goes up on YouTube.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Guy, for
thank you.
coming on my podcast. It was so lovely to chat to you. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that a lot more people will be starting to dig into all this stuff and yeah, and sharing this information. So I just find it so fascinating. And I think, just in closing, I think one of the most exciting things about these times is that before we came across all this stuff in the last, say, 10, 15, 20 years, we were pretty much told that there's nothing new under the sun, that we've discovered everything, on the earth or the globe, and that there's nothing new. So that's it. We know everything. End of story. Go back to work, children.
Mm,
Whereas now there is so much to discover. It's like being a kid in a candy store, really. There's just so
yeah.
many things to unwrap and unravel and research and so many mysteries. And we're not going to get to the bottom of even half of it, but it's just fun, for me anyway, going down these rabbit holes and rabbit warrens and things and joining dots and putting pieces of the puzzle together. And yeah, so it's just knowing that there is so much more out there. There's more lands, there's more information, there's so much more to life. So yeah, on all levels, physical and spiritual. So all right. Well, thanks again, Guy.
Thank
So,
you.
yep, no worries. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. And there's when you do your other book, there'll definitely be another podcast, another show to explore. So, yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in to Caravan of Consciousness. This is episode 16, and I'll catch you all later.